Jake, I honestly thought going into this year, Modern Horizons 3 was going to present us with the most pushed stuff, and I think it did, but I definitely wasn't expecting Duskmourn to have this many singles that I'm actually interested in picking up.
Yeah, the set looks pretty pushed, and today we're going to talk to you about the cards from Duskmourn that we're the most interested in, that we would probably pick up if we weren't just buying boxes trying to crack cards.
Gigantic thanks to all of our Patreon supporters. Without you, life would be too spooky to live. That's a Duskmourn reference. It would be spooky without our patrons. You get it. Jake and Joel Are Magic is brought to you by Card Conduit, the best place to sell your cards quickly and easily on the internet. Turn your extra cards worth $1 or more into cash in your pocket. We're also brought to you by Drip Shop. Drip Shop right now, starting September 18th, has got bounties running on Duskmourn. You open Duskmourn over there and you open a fractured foil card in Japanese, you're going to get a free $100 credit to use on the site. Go sign up at Drip using our link down in the description. Get some free credit when you do. And also TCG Player, the best place to buy your cards on the internet.
Special thanks to our other sponsors, Dragon Shield, MTG Stocks, and Moxfield.
Jake, I want to start off with our new permanent type. It's a room. We've got Dazzling Theater and Prop Room. One side is Dazzling Theater, which gives all of your creature spells you cast Convoke. Wow, we are helping to cast our big mana creatures. And we've also got Prop Room, which untaps each creature you control during each player's untap steps. So you've got this, I will now allow you to convoke your creatures with your creatures, and I'm going to untap your creatures for you every turn so that you can do that more if you wish. If you're not familiar with rooms, real quick, you play one side like a regular enchantment, and then at any point you want, when you have the mana, well, as you could do it on sorcery speed, you can pay the mana cost of the other one. Unlock that door just means you get a second enchantment, basically, but they happen to be stapled to the same card.
Yeah, it's cool. We've seen this in the past where cards have had two different sides, and sometimes you could cast both sides, but this is an interesting take on it. You get an enchantment, and then later on in the game, if you have nothing to do, or if it's advantageous, you get another enchantment. Two things on one card. We always talk about cards that have like flashback and different effects that you can use again. Cards that have this kind of utility are going to be really attractive. And this seems really good in any deck that's like tokens, any type of deck that's just like, yeah, you want to get big stuff out. I see it being like a white-green card most likely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very, very strong card.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Use the extra token creatures that you're spitting out to cast your creatures so that you can stay open with your mana for heroic intervention so that you don't just get aced.
Right. And this card here, Enduring Innocence, you're going to see a lot of these cards from this cycle that come out as a creature, and then when they die, they come back as an enchantment. So this one is a 2/1 with lifelink. Whenever one or more other creatures you control with power 2 or less enter, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn, and then as you can see, when it dies, if it was a creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. It's an enchantment. So there's a whole cycle for this. All of them do the same thing, or not the same thing, but they all have the same effect. They come in as a creature, and when they die, they come back as an enchantment.
Glimmers are fantastic. It's one of my favorite cycles we've gotten this year. Anything that can be cast and then just automatically comes back for you, super pesky, and you're going to be able to synergize it into whatever it fits into as far as archetypes go. Funeral Room is one room, is the room on the left, and the Awakening Hall is the room on the right. We've got Funeral Room, which is whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. Good, because it's each opponent, but we've seen this effect a ton, just more redundancy on it. And then Awakening Hall says for 8 mana, when you unlock this door, return all creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. So a nice, like, only for you kind of Rise of the Dark Realms effect for a lot of mana. But, Jake, you can just pay it for 3, get it out there, have this passive effect that's working with all of the other pieces that you've got that are doing this exact same effect. And then at some point, if you got 8 mana, sure, we'll dump it in. We'll walk into the Awakening Hall and see all of our dead relatives again.
Get all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
I like the card a lot. I do think it's going to be the kind of card where once this effect is on the battlefield, people are able to watch and see that this big effect is coming.
Yeah.
So
a little political. I think that's one of the reasons I like it so much. This mechanic, this permanent type, is it is a little kind of political. It's like, don't make me go into the Awakening Hall.
Yeah, because we're definitely going in if we get there. I know that big graveyard decks are going to like this effect, and if it does fit into an Aristocrats kind of theme, that's double duty.
Oh, 100%.
And then we have Grievous Wound. Interesting card here that says, no, I hate you, you player. 2 black, 3 other for an enchantment aura. It feels like a curse, but it isn't. Enchant player can't gain life. Enchanted player, you enchant a player, and that player can't gain life. And whenever enchanted player is dealt damage, they lose half their life rounded up. So if somebody has finagled their way into being arch enemy of the table, you would play this on them and say, all right, friends, it's time to take them down. I know I was just playing against someone who was playing a lot of life gain recently with
That's
Travis
what you do
and
to
some
them.
friends. And yeah, this would be a good card for them because they got up to like 160 life at one point, and it was like all of us were sitting at like 19s and 20s and that kind of thing. And it was like, okay, it's time for you to die.
And what if you could ping them for 1 damage and they take 80 basically? That would be pretty fantastic. Yeah, I always find in Commander games where I think I'm going to win, I have a game plan for everybody. I'm like, I'm going to attack this person on the ground. I'm just going to keep this person tamped down until they're last and I've steamrolled everybody. And then this person, I'm going to get around them and shock them and surprise them to defeat them this way. I always find that ends up happening. With a card like Grievous Wound, you're basically packing in your library one of your game plans. You're like, for you, we're just gonna give you a Grievous Wound and you're gonna die. There's no way. Every time you residually take damage, whenever enchanted player is dealt damage, you know how many lands we all just voluntarily put in our decks that say, add a mana, deal damage to yourself. Whoops.
Right.
Every time you do that, now you're taking half. Ouchie.
Yeah.
Ouchie.
It also combos very nicely with Pestilence, right? You could just burn somebody down in just a few activations of Pestilence, kill creatures, and then whatever player this is attached to. You know, if you're running it in like a blue-black deck that has stuff like Mirror Maid and stuff like that, that's going to allow you to copy enchantments.
Yes, dude.
You just start doing this to the whole table.
Now you are thinking, now we are grievously wounding all of our buddies at the table. Meathook Massacre 2, I think, caught some hell, but I am a real big fan of this, and I think long-term everybody's going to turn on to this card. Let's look at this card first without the X stuff. This is a 4-mana enchantment that says whenever a creature you control dies, you may pay 3 life. If you do, return that card under your control with a finality counter on it, which means if it dies, then it exiles instead of going to the graveyard. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, they may pay 3 life. If they don't, return that card under your control with a finality counter on it. For 4 mana, knowing that there are 4 black pips on this card, that's a very good enchantment. Then, if you want to, at time of casting, you can pay 2 extra mana to have everybody sack 1 creature, or you can pay 4 extra mana to have everybody sack 2 creatures. And all of these triggers,
and so on.
Exactly, all of these triggers down here happen off of each of those deaths. I think this is a powerhouse of an enchantment that I definitely want to grab early, because this seems like the kind of card. It's not like Great Henge power level, but it's that kind of card that I feel like people are going to turn on to long term, and they're not going to reprint this a lot, specifically not in the next 2 or 3 years.
Now, I know they're trying to save room here on the card, but when it says return, that means to the battlefield.
Yes, that is the new shorthand for return to the battlefield. They just dropped to the battlefield.
I like the OG Meathook Massacre more, but I'm going to say this is very good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like you said, for 4 mana, you get all of this value. I like it for a life gain deck. You got to have a deck that has some sort of life gain if you really want to get the most out of this, because you're going to be paying a significant amount of life if you want to continuously get stuff off of this. But yeah, good card, worth considering.
Imagine having this down in a board wipe happening. I mean, I know that whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, choose 3 life, or I get it. Seems small beans at the time, but just 4 creatures on your battlefield, which is pretty common. Then a board wipe hits. If you want all of those to just go to the graveyard, you got to pay 12 life. Seems like a lot to me. Seems very strong.
Right. Nowhere to Run is an interesting card. 1 black, 1 other. For an enchantment with flash, when nowhere to run enters the battlefield, an opponent...
Target creature.
God, I'm just like trying to find where the battlefield is on the card. It's driving me crazy.
Return has broken Jake's brain.
Yeah, I hate it. All right, so Flash. When nowhere to run enters, target creature an opponent controls gets -3/-3 until end of turn. So you have something here that is removal that gets around indestructible, which is nice. Creatures your opponents control can be the targets of spells and abilities as though they didn't have hexproof. Ward abilities of those creatures don't trigger. So ward is kind of like the hexproof workaround kind of thing. You have to pay a cost in order to target a creature. There's different ward effects that are sometimes you have to pay mana, sometimes you have to pay life, sometimes you have to sacrifice things. But this is one of those cards that just turns off those pesky creatures that have those pesky abilities.
Yeah, it kills an Esper Sentinel, kills all of the, you know, 1-mana dorks that can tap and protect a different creature with color protection. It kills all of those, yeah, pesky stuff that's like 1 and 2 mana easily. But then it also can turn off hexproof and turn off ward. Pretty sweet utility. Probably a bit of a meta play depending on if your friends are constantly running commanders with hexproof or ward. Obviously, you're going to want to grab a copy of this just to kind of meta for your own local play group. But an interesting effect on a 2-mana enchantment. We've also got these impending avatar horrors in this set. We'll start with Overlord of the Baelmerk, but it's not the only one we put on here. For 2 mana, you can cast this as just an enchantment with impending 5, which is 5 time counters put onto it when you cast it as just as an enchantment. When it enters as a creature or an enchantment, so it counts for the 2 mana, or attacks, mill 4 cards, which is very strong. You're underestimating mill 4, and then you may return a non-avatar creature card or a planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. And it doesn't indicate that you have to choose from the 4 milled cards. So something that you've had to discard as part of an effect, get it right back. Something that's died, get it back, etc. Regular reanimator shenanigans. Then eventually, once you've got the time counters off, you've got a 5/5 that can attack, continuously mill you 4. As a graveyard player, I like this thing's ability to fill up the graveyard pretty quickly, especially once it's attacking.
Yeah, I love this for graveyard-centric decks, being able to use that impending to get that effect early, and then you're getting a 5/5 that's going to allow you to do it again. Cards that have multiple effects stapled into them tend to be very popular.
Definitely. I like it as an early reanimation target, too. Like, if I had this in my opening hand, I'd be really excited, because I'd try to figure out some way to discard it. And if I absolutely couldn't, I could impend it, but I could get discarded early, you know, and reanimate it. It enters, we start attacking, we're milling. Seems fun. Unstoppable Slasher is pretty insane.
Yeah, this is a card that's going to be a lightning rod. There's effects like this that have come out before, but we have a death touching 2/3. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, they lose half their life, rounded up. Whenever it dies, if it had no counters on it, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control with 2 stun counters on it. You can remove counters in certain situations. There are cards that are going to allow you to do that. But even with the stun counters, I think it's a very fun card that, if anything, is going to eat a removal. And if your pod is anything like mine, you got a lot of players running a lot of big effects, and they're not running enough interaction. And so a card like this is actually going to do things.
Yeah, the only way to deal with it is to like throw somebody in front of it, sacrifice that thing, because it's going to kill it, and then come back after 2 untaps. The 3rd untap, it'll actually get to untap and do more things if you don't get into any shenanigans with the stun counters. Yeah, I think this is super silly. Token decks don't care about this card, but you know, otherwise people are going to have a tough time, you know, specifically like spell-centric or permanent type specific decks that value every creature they've got in their deck, won't love just being like, fine, I'll just throw this thing in front of it, I guess. And what happens? It just stays. Okay, cool. That's that. I feel like that's the kind of reaction that card's going to get.
Yeah, I like it in a couple decks that have, you know, Rogue's Passage or some sort of effect like, you know, unblockable.
Oh yeah,
there's plenty of equipment out there that have unblockable on it.
Yeah.
Valgavoth, Terror Eater. Got a big card here.
Yeah.
It's a 6 and 3 black for a 9/9 flying lifelink. Ward, sack 3 non-land permanents. That's just so that you can target it. And if a card you didn't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. And during your turn, you may play cards exiled with this card. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana cost rather than pay its mana cost. So you got a big life linker here that's going to get you back the life that you're going to have to pay to cast stuff from exile. Got pretty much everything it needs built into the card.
Yeah, it's a tough ward there for anybody that's not making a ton of tokens. Leyline of the Void on a huge creature that then lets you sort of play that stuff as well in a backdoor way, and then refills your own lifelink stuff. It is a huge 9/9 for 9. It's the whole thing of the set. I'm pretty sure everybody's just running around inside Valgavoth. I don't understand if we've all gone in Valgavoth's Dorothy there and just that's what we've been running around inside, or if he's just omnipresent. I don't read the story anymore, but it felt wrong not to mention Valgavoth. Big 9 mana reanimator target. That's how I look at this. You know,
massive reanimation target.
Right.
Jeez.
Like kill this. Yeah, sure. Sack 3 non-land things to try and ace this. Otherwise, that first swing is going to be an 18-point life swing, and we're gonna get down to business. Inside Valgavoth. Inside Valgavoth, actually, Jake, we've got the Charred Foyer and the Warped Space, another room that we like. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you've got Charred Foyer opened up, you get to exile the top card of your library, and you can play that card this turn. Nice, 4 mana. That's pretty on rate for that effect. Maybe a little behind rate nowadays. Warped Space is 6 mana on the other side, and it says once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast from exile. So Charred Foyer exiles a thing. Warped Space says, hey, the first one's free. Come on in.
Massive.
I love this card. This seems really fun.
Obviously, it's like a staple in a deck like Prosper, right?
Yes.
But
any of those that are exiling things, impulse drawing things to play. 100%.
Yeah, they want this, and they don't even need the front side of the card.
No.
They can just play the back side of the card, and it's going to be good. Now, having a card put into exile that you can later on just play for free, so for 10 mana, you're investing a lot here. There's a big investment, but the return you're getting is going to pay off, honestly, in spades, in my opinion. You're going to get a lot of value from this.
Yep.
If it sits on the field.
When it's worded in a way that's letting you play the lands as well, so it's not really like boxing you out of any resources, just giving you a little bit more, while kind of being expensive, you know. We have another Glimmer the Dog one this time. This is, you'll recognize this enchantment from history. Whenever another creature you control enters, it gets +2/+0 and gains haste. And then when it dies, it comes back as an enchantment that just continues to do that. You know, haste, Jake, has kind of become the only way to deal with certain strategies is, all right, I'm just going to haste you out instead of just sitting here and getting board wiped every turn.
I think it's really going to shine, or I should say, I think it's really going to glimmer in red-green. Yeah, it's this enduring cycle. You're getting value here. You're getting a creature that when it dies comes back as an enchantment, and it's got all the best parts of being an enchantment, which means it's hard to remove because you got to have enchantment removal to deal with it.
Yep.
So you get a little hasty going on here, and then later on you get some more haste going.
Double duty to being a dog creature type. This one's going to automatically go in the cats and dogs decks just because of what it is. You know, I think that's a good point. That's not irrelevant.
Oh, and neither is Razorkin Needlehead. For 2 red, we're getting a 2/2. It has first strike during your turn, and whenever an opponent draws a card, it deals 1 damage to them. So for players that are drawing a lot of cards, this is going to be one of those kind of like, in my opinion, like a little hate bear. I think sweatier pods are going to find a space for this card because there are some players that like to draw a ton of cards.
Yeah.
And if you can get this out there, it is definitely going to eat a removal so that they can execute their strategy.
Yeah, little Shieldred-y, little Nekusari. Razorkin Needlehead, I think, is most relevant because it is a 2 mana version of this effect, and it passively does it regardless of anything. Opponent draws a card, Razorkin Needlehead, specific wording, deals the damage to them. You give this thing Infect and force everybody else to draw 10 cards, Hi, you just won. You've got
Yeah,
a lot
true.
of extra combo-y potential with Razorkin Needlehead in particular, because I think it's so low CMC. We're able to, you know, navigate the combo waters a little bit better. This is one of the red cards I think will be impactful. I'm really excited about this one. I think people are going to be able to play it pretty well.
Next up, we have the Roller Crusher Ride. For 1 red, 2 an X, we're getting a card that has a Delirium Matters on here. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player, while there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, it deals double that damage instead. So we've seen all these effects in the past. You get a ton of damage doubling going on. Dolphum, Furnace of Wrath, you know, Fire Emancipation, and so on. And they do things. Let's just say that. When the Roller Crusher Ride enters, it deals X damage to each of up to X target creatures. So it's going to come in, if you pay, for example, 6, a red, 2, and 3, it's going to come in and it's going to deal X, or 6 damage, excuse me, because of itself, if Delirium is online, to each of up to X target creatures. In this instance, it would be 3.
Y'all, as you're building these Delirium cards into your decks, take a look at your land base. You're going to help yourself out a lot just by putting the cheap fetch lands in there. I'm talking Evolving Wilds. I'm talking Terramorphic Expanse. I'm talking, if that's your budget, start there. You can get those for basically free. That kind of thing is going to help you achieve Delirium. Lands that sack and go to the graveyard. There were the ones from New Capenna as well that automatically sack themselves and let you go get the basic type of any of the 3, I think, that it represents. Use those along with instants and sorceries and creatures. If you've got enough of those lands helping you out, you'll catch residuals from your artifacts and enchantments to help you with the other permanent types, or the other card types, excuse me, that you need to get that Delirium on your online. Just pay attention to that. I think Delirium's going to throw some people off on this set.
It's also worth noting that, you know, they built a whole deck around Delirium for this set with the Winter deck.
Yeah.
And that deck features stuff like Haywire Might, which is an artifact creature.
Exactly.
So in that instance, that's going to check for 2 out of your 4 for Delirium. So enchantment creature, stuff like that, cards that are good, that work with Delirium, that do double duty, that's going to work in these decks as well.
Yeah, you see Delirium running a lot of artifact creatures. Screaming Nemesis we've broken down on the channel, but it's absolutely one of the singles that we want to pick up. When it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target, and if a player's dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of this game with all of your Punisher effects. Screaming Nemesis, it's fun. It's a fun passive
Love
effect.
That it has haste.
Yeah, right.
Another from the Enduring cycle here, we have Enduring Vitality, 2 green, 1 other for 3/3 Vigilance. Creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color, and when it dies, it comes back and does that same thing as an enchantment. Creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. This is like a Cryptolith Rite. It's just doubling up on that kind of effect that's going to give all of your little tokens the ability to tap, that kind of thing. You can cast big stuff with it. You can cast more tokens. The world is your oyster. Build the deck how you want.
3 mana is a really good rate for that, y'all. Typically, that's around a 4 mana ability to achieve having your creatures tap for mana just passively. And so 3 mana is good. It's a creature and it comes back. It's insane. Leyline of Hope. Same as the ley lines. They start on the battlefield if they were in your hand. Of Hope is a 4 mana white one. If you would gain life, you gain that much life +1. And if you have 7 or more life, creatures you control get +2/+2. Nice little anthem across the board.
Yeah, it looks like an Angel's card. Looks like any typical life gain card.
Heliod.
You know, if you have a board that's gaining life that goes wide with creatures, that's who wants this deck, because that anthem needs to matter. So like I had brought up when we were talking about these cards, I brought up Oloro. Our friend plays Oloro, and that deck has a good suite of creatures in it, but it doesn't go wide like an Angel deck or something like that, or like an Aristocrats kind of build, where I think this card is really going to shine.
Soldiers, something like that, that's got the life gain built in. I've seen Heliod versions with token creatures, and you're gaining the life, you're dumping the counters on the token creatures, and they're just growing and growing and growing. So yeah, Leyline's pretty cool. As well as Hedge Shredder is, man. This is a nutso ability.
Yeah, I like this ability. 2 green, 2 other for 5/5 vehicle here, meaning you have to crew it with 1 power in order to make this vehicle turn on so that it can swing. But whenever it attacks, you may mill 2 cards. Whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from your library, put them onto the battlefield tapped. So look, even if you're not crewing this and swinging with it and getting the ability that way, if it's on the battlefield, it's just going to sit like an enchantment with an ability on it that says, you know, whenever you're milling stuff, if you're just like dumping things into your graveyard, you could just put those lands onto the battlefield tapped. This is a way to go wide quickly.
Oh man, just the ramp that you can achieve from this of milling yourself out is absolutely insane. This is a crazy, I don't care about any of the other stuff. Take the power toughness away, the crew, the attack trigger, don't care. 4 mana artifact, when lands go into your graveyard from your library, they go onto your battlefield tapped. Yeah, I'll take that. That is fine and plenty enough for me.
You know, put that right next to Ripples of Undeath.
Let's go, baby.
And so as we're milling stuff with Ripples of Undeath, we can just be like, oh no, we're going to use our Head Shredder ability, put all the lands onto the battlefield.
Mesmeric Orb, untap my 6 lands. Oh no! Oh no!
Yes, man.
Kona,
yes.
Rescue Beastie is a little bit like a Elvish Piper, but it has to like attack or crew something or be tapped via an ability. It's a 4 mana 4/3 beast at the beginning of your 2nd main phase. If Kona Rescue Beastie is tapped, you can put a permanent card, very cool, from your hand onto the battlefield. So your floor is like probably a land and your ceiling is omniscience.
Yeah. Even if you wanted to put this at the helm of a mono green deck, I think you could find some fun things to do with it.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of vehicles are, you know, monocolored, and this is going to crew nicely. You make sure to give it some sort of, you know, protection, like an asceticism, run some of those like snakeskin type effects so people aren't removing it. And then just try to keep it tapped all the time and crap out Eldrazi.
Yeah.
Why not?
Just insane. Look for any commanders that specifically allow you to tap your creatures, you know, convoke stuff. Anything that says tap an untapped creature you control is perfect to get Kona absolutely spitting out huge tentacly beasts onto the battlefield for free, which is always an excellent price to pay for something.
That's right. We have another Leyline here, and this is for your 5-color decks. Leyline of Mutation, 2 green, 2 other for an enchantment. If it is in your opening hand, you may begin with it on the battlefield. But it doesn't really matter until you're ready to pay big costs and until you have mana on the battlefield. So if this is like the worst Leyline as far as Leylines that can just start on the battlefield. So it's like, sure, we're saving 4 mana. We don't have to cast it, but you may pay Wooburg rather than pay the mana cost for spells you cast. So once you have 5 colors online, you're just like, okay, like we said, you know, Eldrazi or, you know, this big 10 cost spell, anything that you want to play, Omniscience, like Joel was just talking about, all of those huge high cost spells, this is going to let you crap them out for 5 mana.
Yeah.
Pretty sweet.
Use it definitely wins the award for not using the ability that is inherently granted to it by being what it is. Does not care that much about being on the battlefield before the game has begun. But yeah, use all those filter permanents that don't get used for anything else, that just say, spend 1, create a mana of any color, you know? And suddenly everything in your deck costs 5. Could be cool. Anything that's reducing, by the way, I think would be added to this. So any of those Phyrexians that are like, instead of a color pip, you could pay 2 life for a thing. Yeah, just crap out a bunch of stuff for 5 mana in your 5-color deck. Sure, you're doing that already, right? You're cheating stuff onto the battlefield. That's why you're playing 5 colors. Overlord of the Hauntwoods we saw when the set first was revealed, but when it enters creating a land for 3 mana that creates any color of mana, and then eventually being a 6/5 that can attack, and every time it attacks, it creates a command tower. I just pissed off all the constructed players. I think that this is going to be run in a lot of things.
Yeah, I think it's a cool effect. It's just gonna, you know, allow you to ramp a little bit. It's another one of these things that's doing 2 things, right? It's coming in, giving you an effect, and then later on you get that effect again, except on a body.
Yeah, I really love that 3 mana making that token land. That's so tight.
Now we have a card that's going to be very pesky, I can already tell you. 2 green and 1 other for a 3/3, Tyvar the Pummeler. Tap, another untapped creature you control, Tyvar the Pummeler gains indestructible until end of turn. And then it has an overrun effect built into it. And that means that you could use this again and again for as much mana as you want. 2 green, 3 other creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. I think because this card has indestructible built into it, it's going to be one of these cards that's like a finisher. It's obviously a lightning rod for removal. So, I think it's going to be best in the 99. That's where I really 100%. Like it.
Yeah.
Like a red-green or like a Naya kind of thing. Yeah,
I think you need a
very strong
trample enabler alongside the whole thing, because I like how you are able to, as much as you have 5 mana, dump those 5 manas in and do that effect over and over again. Mm-hmm. And it's going to grow exponentially, because the second time that you would do this, if you have 10 mana to activate this twice, it would check again for the greatest power, which will have been increased by the prior activation. So cool in that regard. Needs trample some way, but I think you're right. Having a go wide, very, very synergistic go wide legend here that will pump your team and survive via your team, absolutely worth a look.
I like it for 10 mana. You pump it once, and then you use Chandra's Ignition on whatever you just pumped. Clear everybody out, and then swing for the fences.
Hello, I'm here, and all my elves are coming as well. We've got another enchantment room here. Jake, Walk-In Closet is a 3 mana version of play lands from your graveyard. Love it.
Yeah,
more
Ramanop Excavator on a enchantment.
Right.
That's cool.
Harder to remove Ramanop Excavator. And then for 5 mana, you've got the Forgotten Cellar you can go down into, that when you unlock it, you can cast spells from your graveyard this turn, and if a card would be put into your graveyard, it exiles, so you can't get some insane infinite loop-de-loops going. I've been recently in love with a legend that was printed in Bloomborough named Lumra, my sweet bear. And I've been playing this deck like crazy, man, so much. It's a self-mill landfall deck, mono green, and I got really, really pumped when I got another redundant effect, Walk-In Closet. That was enough for me. I was like, anything else this thing does is just, oh my God, I get another Crucible and more? Hell yes.
It's a better Crucible of Worlds that's restricted to green.
Exactly.
Like but it's like people play Ramanop just because it does what Crucible does. It's not a squishy little creature, dude. This is hard to remove. The other side of the card, you need to be in a moment where you've got a lot of mana available.
Oh, it's a late
because
game.
You're going to pay 5 to just unlock the door and make it to where you can do stuff this turn.
Exactly.
So you need to have a big mana moment ready to go. But if you do, you could be like, all right, we're casting all the removal here. We're casting all the impactful, just
I milled my Crater Hoof.
All this kind of
Right.
Yeah.
And that's how you win.
Exactly.
This deck doesn't have any problem getting into situations where it has an insane amount of mana. I'll put it that way.
Right.
This deck has bigger problems running out of basic forests to go pull out of the library. That is how intense this deck can get. And so this card is just, people that play this deck are going to get it. This card in particular is just very welcome in that archetype, and people are going to be insanely in love with it, I think.
Yeah, because you're using the lands to build up your mana base.
Right.
And then, in theory, when you do cast that side of the card, you should have a lot of mana ready to go.
Tons. And you can recast.
Oh, yeah. Jolly Balloon Man here. 1 white, 1 red, 1 other for hasty 1/4. And for 1, you tap it. Create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control, except it's a 1/1 red balloon creature in addition to its other colors and types, and it has flying and haste. Sack it at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. So this card is really going to shine when paired with, big attack triggers, that kind of thing.
ETBs, attack triggers, combat damage triggers. There's a lot of different routes I think you can actually play Jolly Balloon Man, but for haste, for 3 mana, basically you can have this ability for 4 mana. You can do it immediately. And so that I think is what's going to put JBM over the edge for people, is that haste. That's you can go very quickly with haste.
Haste and evasion is what's really going to make this card shine, and it's got that.
Death triggers. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like, you sacrifice the thing at the end. So anything with an insane death trigger, ETB trigger, attack trigger, or combat damage trigger, because you're going to see your open lane before you even activate this, knowing I just have to get through with a 1/1 flyer. Oh, man. I'm glad that this thing is only 2 colors. I'm really glad that this thing is only 2 colors.
Any like creatures that bring other creatures. I know we say this card, so much, but Avenger of Zendikar, for example,
Sun
like that
Titan.
kind of thing. Sun Titan, just like play your Sun Titan, swing in the air, get your first trigger, get something back, and then you're swinging, get the second something back.
That's what I'm saying. It's dumb.
Yeah. There's a lot of good ways to go with this, other than our boomer examples that we just showed you.
Oh, sure, but yeah, we've been collecting patrons' new commander decks from Duskmourn to look at in a future stream, and JBM was sent to us today, and I just know, man. Any creatures that say enters or attacks, oh my god, dude, holy crap. JBM loves creatures that say enters or attacks. Pretty mean. Nico, Light of Hope, is back. Nico hasn't been around in a while. Brought some shard mechanic back. I think we've got a total of like 2 cards that make shards in MTG now. 4 mana for Nico, 3/4. They're a human wizard. When it enters, you create 2 shard tokens, which are enchantment tokens with 2 sacks, scry 1, draw a card. 2 mana activation and tap Nico to exile target non-legendary creature you control. Shards you control, those 2 shards you brought in, unless you've made more of them somehow, become copies of it until the beginning of the next end step, and then you return the creature that you exiled under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. There's a lot of different ways you can use this. Obviously, face value. Create 2 copies of your Sun Titan. Swing with your Sun Titan
kind
shards.
Of similar to Jolly Balloon Man that we were just talking about, right?
Exactly. But you can also save a non-legendary creature this way. Re-enter a non-legendary creature this way. Get their ETB again.
It's blinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting ways you can take Nico, I think.
Yeah, I think this card is going to be a son of a gun to play against. I'm already calling it because, if you're able to... because it's when it enters, so if you're playing this in a blink strategy, you can make a lot of shards, buddy. You're going to make a lot of
Conjurer's
shards.
Closet, Nico, Light of Hope over. Oh my god, dude. Yeah.
Yes, man. Yes. And so the shard thing can be extremely, extremely abusive. And then the fact that you're able to exile non-legendary stuff, thankfully it's reined in a little bit. It can't exile itself, so that's nice. But yeah, it's a good card.
Absolutely. I'm a fan of Nico. I also like Overlord of the Mistmoors. I really like these avatars, man. This one's a 4 mana enchantment when you cast it for impending. When it enters, you create 2 2/1 flyers, so you get 4 flying power for 4 mana.
For 4.
And then when the impending's done, you get a 6/6 that when it attacks, it puts 2 more on there. You reanimate this thing, it ETBs, 6 power on the ground, 4 power in the air, 10 power swing. Now you're at 14 power swinging. Overlord of the Mistmoors seems like it's going to get out of hand real fast, and I think it all has to do with 4 flying power across 2 bodies on the ETB or attack. Insane.
Yeah. This is one of those cards, I think sometimes when people play Commander and when they watch videos like this, you have to keep in mind your power level. Because if you're in a really sweaty, like kind of like near CEDH, you're not even touching this card. There's no reason to.
No, and that's true of most of the cards on this list.
Exactly. So for this, you have to remember, and sometimes, we'll get a comment where people say, like, oh, no, it's just too much mana or it's too expensive, or by the time the impending cost gets there, the game will be over. I will tell you, I don't agree with you. No. I think a lot of games get very grindy, and what's going to end up happening is that 4 power on 2 bodies as flyers is going to be a nice stall until you get later in the game where you 100% are going to get to use this card. So, it's a very fun card. It reminds me of almost like a Grave Titan, I think we talked about when it first came out.
These are so good for the new Esper enchantment precon. That commander gives your enchantments you've drawn Miracle for a 4 cost reduction, I think, of their mana cost. And so... commanders on the battlefield, top deck Overlord of the Mistmoors, play it for 3 as a creature. Yes. Obviously going to be good in decks like that, but yeah, I would reanimate this thing. I'm not caring. I don't care about the mana cost. I don't care. This is a great but just basic level punchy reanimator target as far as I'm concerned.
This land is here as a placeholder for all 5 lands that came out.
Here they all are.
Yeah, they are the allied colors. So we will see the enemy ones in the future. But in Duskmourn, we have got the Verge lands, what we're going to call them. We've talked about these before, but they kind of remind us of the Tainted lands that came out ages ago, I believe, in Torment. And so you're getting an untapped land right out the gate. In this instance, with the Blazemire Verge, you have tap to add 1 black, and then you can tap to add a red, activate only if you control a swamp or a mountain. In Commander, there's so many cards that are going to activate these to where you're immediately going to have access to both colors. We've talked about, fetching into the Triomes or fetching into any of,
Surveil lands, the new Surveil ones.
Yeah,
from
new
Murders.
Surveil lands, Shocks. There's so many different ways to turn this ability on, and I don't think you're ever going to be in a situation where you don't like these lands.
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
Situations will be very few and far between.
The land cycles this year have actually been pretty nuts, man. We have gotten some sick land cycles this year. That's going to be a video I think we need to make in the next couple months. But I was going to have a hard time sitting here, obviously, making a video that's something like the cards we want to buy from Duskmourn and not mention these lands, because I know that as soon as these are available, I'm getting them for all of my commander decks that are relevant. And then when inevitably the others come out, and I won't say other 5, the other is any number that there possibly could be, mathematicians. The others, when they come out in the future, I will also be obtaining those as quickly as possible and getting them into my commander decks, because these are so good. I love them. Thank you for the new rare land cycle, Batsy. We appreciate you very much.
I think it would be funny if they did like 2 enemy and 3 allied one of these times. It would just break everybody's brain.
Make everybody really upset about it.
Yeah, but that would lead to a very weird standard season.
Love it.
Anyway,
those lands are good. 3 mana board wipe. We've also talked about this one, but I definitely am going to pick up a copy or 2 of this. Destroy all tapped or destroy all untapped. It's a 3 mana board wipe, y'all. You're going to be able to figure this out.
Yeah, 3 mana board wipe that has versatility that you can protect your stuff and blow everybody else's stuff. It's like the Cyclonic Rift thing, right? You return everything you don't control to its owner's hand.
Yeah.
Kind of got like that vibe going on.
Jake just earned himself an internet clip saying that you're going to blow everybody's stuff. Split up is good. Toby's Beastie Befriender is a 3 mana 1/1. Creature tokens. Creature token decks.
Staple in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
They have just been getting, I feel like for 2 years they got a lot of love and we started noticing it, and then for the next 2 years we were talking about how they were getting a lot of love and they kept getting a lot of love. Now here we are a couple years later and we're still just like, man, these creature token decks, they keep printing good cards. How about giving all your creature tokens flying as long as you have 4 of them?
It seems like what we want out of a token experience, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Plus it creates one just to get the ball rolling on it. I think a lot of people are going to grab that one. Wandering Rescuer too.
Yeah, 2 white, 3 other for a 3/4 with the F word flash, and it has Convoke, and it has Double Strike, and other tapped creatures you control have hexproof. Oh, boy. I don't even know what to say about this one.
The amount of lines on this are nuts because, and I'm not just talking text, hey, I have got at the very bottom, think of this as a savior card. Your creatures, your utility creatures are untapped and you got enough mana between them, go to remove your combo piece creature. Cool. In response, Wandering Rescuer. That tapped creature has hexproof. Right.
Yeah. Like, it does everything you need it to do.
Yeah. Wandering Rescuer is super sweet. Love the art on this one too. I like how they've used this character since we first saw it in War of the Spark and all the way through like a main storyline character. Yeah. And now, subplot character. Very cool. I like the Wandering Rescuer a lot. I also like Abhorrent Oculus. Look, as the reanimator player, 3 mana for a 5/5 that the only restriction here is we got to exile 6 cards from your graveyard. Easy. We're playing Rona, Herald of the Invasion, baby. I've been putting cards in my graveyard since turn 3 or earlier, dog. Not a problem. It's got flying if you are able to get it out. And then the piece that makes it OP. at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep. Look at the top 2 cards of your library. One gets to go face down on your battlefield as a 2/2, and if it's a creature, you can turn it up at any time for its mana cost. Anytime. And the other goes into your graveyard. So you get to fill up your graveyard more. This card is bonkers. I love this. All my Reanimator decks with blue in them get a new eye.
It's an eye. Yeah, it's pretty sweet that this card is clearly going to do things in Commander, but it's also, in my opinion, 100% going to be a constructed card, because all these decks that just throw tons and tons of cards into the yard are going to have no problem casting this for 3. And then the residual value that you get from just passively manifesting on the opponent's turn. Yeah, dude. 5/5 flyer needs to be answered, and it goes wide. Pretty sweet.
Right, exactly. I know I was a little cringy about Manifest Dread, but this ability, y'all, is so strong. Filling up your graveyard with a choice, with a card that you choose to put in there, and then getting a manifested creature that you get to choose. Manifest Dread's really strong, y'all. Abhorrent Oculus is very strong.
And then the blue Enduring card here, 2 blue, 2 other for Enduring Curiosity. You get a 4/3 with Flash as well. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So tons of cards do this. And then when it dies, it does the same thing, except as an enchantment.
Yep, little Coastal Piracy, little Reconnaissance, these types of cards, more redundancy on them. Worth noting here that we've got an Enchantress in blue now. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, ignore the rest. Draw a card. That's why people are going to play this forever. All of the green decks that have 18 versions of this, 19, whoops, a new one just got printed while I was talking, run all of them, or like most of the best ones, the lowest CMC ones anyway, and so this is going to get run in those decks for sure.
Yeah, you don't even, like, green doesn't want this, but, you know, I specifically brought this card up because we have a buddy that plays Aloro. I don't think there's a world where he skips out on this. That deck is enchantment heavy. You got a 2/3 here with Flash that, you know, he can cast an enchantment, see that it's going to resolve, and then be like, with that on the stack, we'll flash in Entity Tracker. We're going to go ahead and cast Rhystic Study, you know, Mystic Remora, all of these cards, Smothering Tithe, and so on. And just in addition to playing those, just constantly get triggers. And if you do copy this and, you know, you are in blue, you can make copies of it and then play enchantments, then you're just going to be drawing all the cards.
Oh, that's a good point. You're in the clone colors. I like that. I like that point. Mirror Room and Fractured Realm is another room card that we really like. 3 mana on the Mirror Room side makes a token of a creature you control, and then 7 mana on the Fractured Realm side doubles all of your triggered abilities. Full stop. All of your triggered abilities. No like specificity to that. Every triggered ability is doubled. It's a huge mana investment. You're 10 mana in at this point, but early on getting a clone for only 3 mana, and then if you get there, which you probably will, all of your stuff, look for commanders obviously that have a triggered ability, so you're guaranteeing some play. Otherwise you're leaning on your other creatures a lot.
Yeah, good attack triggers, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Something like that. Anything that doubles is going to be a really strong card.
Overlord of the Flood Pits. 2 blue, 3 other for a 5/3 mythic here. It also has this impending ability that we've talked about. Flyer, and whenever it enters or attacks, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. So for, you know, the impending cost, 2 blue, 1 other, we're going to draw 2, discard 1. And then later on when we get it, when it starts attacking, we're going to draw 2, discard 1. So we just have a big beefy flyer, or big beefy flyer here that's going to allow us to continually loot and gain card advantage.
Yeah, gain card advantage alongside looting. That's a huge one there. Sorcery speed is Come Back Wrong. 3 mana, destroy target creature, and then if a creature card's put into a graveyard this way, you return it to the battlefield. There you go, Jake. They took care of you on this card. But then you have to sacrifice it at the beginning of your next end step. Any creatures that you are not wanting on your opponent's side that's got a great ETB, got a great death trigger, any of those, you know, Junji dragons that die and you get to choose some stuff, those would be the targets for Come Back Wrong. It doesn't give haste, so like an attacking trigger is kind of tough unless you're giving haste passively to your stuff a lot. So know how you're going to use this before you build it in, but I think that this could be a really fun card regardless.
Yeah, whether you want to destroy something and get a good utility out of it, like if it has a good ETB, or whether you need to destroy something just so that you can get through that turn.
Right.
You know, that's something that's very basic, but destroy a creature just so you can get through and you get it until end of turn. I think having, you know, some sort of aristocrats thing, you know, that's going to kind of be good if you can sacrifice the creature and get some sort of value out of it before it just sacrifices at the end step. I think that that's going to be a good way to use this card. But yeah, like you said, anything with big, you know, enters and dies triggers, that's probably where the card's going to shine the most.
Yep. Absolutely.
Enduring Tenacity, 2 black, 2 other for a 4/3. The black one from the Enduring cycle, we have a Snake Glimmer. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. We've seen this effect so many times, but if you want redundancy, it starts as a creature, and then when it dies, you get it as an enchantment that does the same thing. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life.
I was looking up new combos from this set for Commander, and it's so funny how much this one pops up because it is just replacing that card in all of the existing combos that already existed with this that are like infinite win the game, you know, I gain, you lose, I gain, now we're in a circle. It's so funny seeing Enduring Tenacity pop up on all the combo charts a lot just because it's essentially it's the same exact card just back, you know. It's always funny to see
like
that.
I think for the players that like to win that way or want to just go for the combo, having something redundant is really cool. But yeah, it's just worth noting that, hey, we got another one.
Yep, absolutely. Into the Pit is an enchantment for 3 mana. You can look at the top card of your library at any time, and you can cast spells from the top of your library by sacrificing a non-land permanent in addition to paying their other costs. Gives you access to kind of a little extra hand, right? Not going to help you with lands off the top of your library. You're going to need to figure something out for that. But literally any other spell, you're going to be able to cast for a sack a token, basically.
Yep. If you have food to sacrifice, if you have treasure to sacrifice, then sacrifice it. Get some card advantage. I think the only thing that's going to be a negative is if we get stopped up by a land, but sometimes cards have a drawback.
Yep, absolutely. They can't all be fantastic winners, but I do really like Formless Genesis. Now, these were from the Commander set. We did explore both the main set and the Commander set to make this video. Formless Genesis, I put on here because this is a brand new Kindred sorcery. So any green creature type decks, you are going to want to give this one a look. I know it has to do a little bit with Graveyard. Formless Genesis is a 3 mana sorcery changeling, so it's going to count whenever you cast an elf spell, whenever you cast a dragon spell. This is going to count for any cards that are looking for stuff like that. Also going to count towards Delirium. As a side note, Kindred and Sorcery are both 2 counters for counting types of cards in your graveyard. Create an XX colorless shapeshifter creature token with Changeling and Death Touch, where X is the number of land cards in your graveyard. Gonna create a 0/0 if there's not at least 1 there. Get at least 1 in there. Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, you can do this. And then Retrace, you get to cast it again. It's gonna really be fantastic in mill decks, obviously self-mill, graveyard, Golgari style decks where you're gonna have residual lands in there, whether or not that's your whole focus. But I think that Kindred decks, just having another additional piece now, I think that will see some play.
I think so. Retrace you can do for as many times as you have lands. So it's like if you want to keep discarding a land and cast this over and over and over again, it's just going to give you a trigger for your whatever your Kindred type is.
Yeah.
And if you do have a ton of lands in the yard, then yes, it could matter a lot.
That's a really good point. If you do have to, in a pinch, cast this for 0, trigger something else, but you just make a 0 because you didn't have a land in the graveyard, it does it helps you. It fills itself up with the Retrace. You can discard a land, gives you a little out to be able to do that.
Convert into Slime is a card with a nice suite of abilities, all tacked into 1 spell. 1 green, 1 black, and 3 other. For sorcery, destroy up to 1 target artifact, up to 1 target creature, and up to 1 target enchantment. That is up to, so you don't need to have targets for all of those in order for the spell to resolve.
Thank God.
It has Delirium. Then if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, create an XX green ooze creature token where X is the total mana value of permanents destroyed this way. So if you are blowing up a lot of big things, then this is going to come back with a big power and toughness. And so yeah, we have a destroy spell here that also brings a body, all for 5 mana.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times, like, it's not going to be difficult for you to, if you have Delirium online, make an 8/8 or a 9/9 or a 10/10.
Sure.
I mean, you're looking at a 2, a 3, and a 4, a 3, a 4, and a 5, right? To make any of those really big creatures. I like converting to slime. It's like a little baby version of Casualties of War and gives you a creature to boot. Giggling Skitter Spike. I keep coming back to this card, man. This card is such an interesting design. One of my favorite new cards. An indestructible 1/1. I'm already on board. That's silly. I love it. 4 mana to cast it. When it attacks, blocks, or becomes the target of a spell, Heroic Dex, looking at you, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. And then for 5 mana, you can pump some more into it and make it a 6/6 so that whenever it attacks, blocks, or becomes the target of a spell, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. 6 every time that happens.
This is all I've ever wanted Creepy Doll to be.
Yes.
Like that kind of effect, the indestructible artifact, the having monstrosity. I will tell you, there is a card that I play just in Imskir, which is like Guardian of Akros, which is like a big indestructible 10 cost defender that you have to dump 10 mana into to make it monstrosity in a 2020. I like this so much better, and it will end up replacing that card just because a 6/6, like, it's going to be so easy to get the monstrosity on this online. And yes, it will eat a Path to Exile or Swords to Plowshares, but it is a massively fun card and extremely good.
Yep, I love Giggling Skitter Spike, one of my favorite new ones.
And then Seance Board. This is a card that Demon and Spirit players are definitely going to like, but if you are in Spellslinger, you might like it as well. A 2-cost mana rock. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, put a soul counter on it, and you can tap to add X mana of any one color where X is the number of soul counters on it. So spend this mana only to cast instant, sorcery, demon, and spirit spells. So it's a mana rock that gets bigger, but yeah, if you're in spirits or demons, you definitely want it. And if you are in Spellslinger, you might want it as well.
Yeah, to me, Seance Board reads as like aristocrat decks. Put this in there so that when you go to cast Exsanguinate or you go to cast Torment of Hailfire at the end of the game, you're going to be able to do that for, I mean, you're going to be able to pump Seance Board up so much. If you're just like able to sacrifice one of your tokens on every turn, it sees Morbid, and then you're just growing this thing and pumping it all into an X spell. I mean, the Exsanguinate decks, if that's your win con, and you've got a way to like kill things repeatedly or kill your own stuff repeatedly, you might want to give this a look. This is going to help you cast those things for sure.
Yeah, and just passively as things are dying throughout the game, if this sits there, it's just going to constantly get Morbid triggers and build and build and build.
Exactly.
And by the time you use this, it may actually have, 10 of these counters on it that are really going to allow you to just absolutely eviscerate people with, Exsanguinate.
Yeah. I mean, you could potentially have 4 counters on it by the time it's coming back around to you once you've cast it. And you're ready to roll. Those are the cards we love from Duskmourn. The names that you've seen scrolling in between us are our supporters at our $10 level over on Patreon. They all get some custom JAJAM sleeves. That's it. Those are our Duskmourn cards we love. We're going to buy these.
Let us know if there's any cards that we missed, and we'll see you in the future.